The officer had already placed the handcuffs on him. Marcus Thornton was kneeling on burning hot asphalt.
His $1,000 suit covered in dust. His briefcase scattered across the highway with confidential federal documents blowing in the Texas wind. The trooper was laughing. He thought he had won. But seconds later, when the backup unit arrived, everything changed. Because Trooper Dale Kowalski had no idea that the black man he just humiliated in front of millions of live viewers was not just a lawyer. He was the federal prosecutor currently investigating police corruption in his own department. And he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. It was golden hour on a rural stretch of Interstate 35, just outside Waco, Texas. The kind of empty highway where you can drive for miles without seeing another soul. Cattle fields stretched endlessly in every direction. A single gas station flickered in the distance, the only sign of civilization for 20 miles in either direction. Marcus Thornton was tired. He had spent the entire day in federal court in Austin, prosecuting a police corruption case that had already put 3 officers behind bars. Now he was heading home to Dallas, dressed in his charcoal Tom Ford suit, driving his black Mercedes at exactly 70 miles per hour. He was calm, methodical, a man who had built his career on staying composed under pressure. As a former Army JAG attorney, he had faced hostile fire in Iraq. As a federal prosecutor, he had stared down drug cartels and white-collar criminals. He thought he had seen it all, but he had never been pulled over by Trooper Bud Kowalski. And he had no idea that this desolate stretch of highway was about to become the scene of a confrontation that would end careers, spark federal investigations, and be watched by millions of people around the world. The blue lights flashed in Marcus's rearview mirror. He checked his speedometer, 70, exactly the speed limit. He signaled properly and pulled onto the shoulder, his hands immediately visible on the steering wheel. He had been through this before. He knew the drill. Keep your hands where they can see them. Stay calm, don't give them a reason, but something felt different this time. The trooper took his time approaching. Marcus watched in his side mirror as the officer walked slowly toward his vehicle, one hand resting on his weapon, peering into the tinted windows with suspicion. When Kowalski finally reached the driver's side window, he didn't ask for license and registration. He didn't explain why he had been pulled over. Instead, he leaned down and asked a question that had nothing to do with traffic violations. "Where you coming from, counselor?" Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The trooper had already decided who he was looking at. A black man in a nice suit driving a nice car. That was the crime. From court in Austin, Marcus answered calmly. "I'm a federal prosecutor heading home to Dallas." Kowalski laughed. "A federal prosecutor, that's a new one. Usually they just say they're going to church. Let me see some identification." Marcus handed over his driver's license and his Texas state bar card. Kowalski barely glanced at them. He was already looking past Marcus into the back seat, searching for something he could use. "You got anything in this vehicle I should know about? Any drugs? Any weapons? Any reason a federal prosecutor would be driving through my county with tinted windows?" Marcus kept his voice steady. "Officer, I signaled my lane change. May I ask why I was pulled over?" Kowalski's jaw tightened. "You want to play lawyer games with me? I asked you a question." "Do you have anything illegal in this vehicle?" Marcus knew this was no longer a traffic stop. This was a fishing expedition, and he knew exactly how dangerous these moments could become. "Officer, I do not consent to any search of my vehicle. I am happy to cooperate with a lawful traffic stop, but I would like to know what violation you observed." Kowalski straightened up. His hand moved from his belt to his weapon. "Step out of the vehicle, now, for officer safety." Marcus took a slow breath. "Am I being detained?" "I said step out of the vehicle now before I drag you out." Marcus complied. He moved slowly, deliberately, keeping his hands visible at all times. As he stepped onto the asphalt, he activated the Bodycam app on his phone in his breast pocket. It began live streaming to federal cloud servers immediately, a habit he had developed after prosecuting too many cases where Bodycam footage mysteriously disappeared. Kowalski grabbed Marcus's arm and spun him around. "You think you know the law? You don't know Texas law, boy. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've heard every excuse, every lie, every I know my rights speech. And you know what? It never works. Marcus said nothing. He let the officer talk. He let him dig his own grave. Kowalski pushed him against the hood of the Mercedes. Spread your legs. I'm going to search your vehicle now. You can give me permission, or I can get a dog out here and tear this thing apart. Your choice. Marcus spoke clearly, knowing his words were being recorded. I do not consent to any search. I am a federal officer. This stop is being documented. Any search will be challenged as a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights. Kowalski laughed again, but this time there was anger in it. He walked to the passenger side, reached through the open window and unlocked the doors. Then he walked to the trunk and opened it. He didn't need consent. He didn't care about consent. He was going to teach this uppity black man a lesson about who had power on this highway. Across the highway, a family in a minivan had pulled into the gas station. The father, a truck driver named Ray Williams, noticed the traffic stop and something about it made him uneasy. The officer seemed too aggressive. The driver seemed too calm. Ray told his wife to stay in the van and started recording on his phone. His teenage daughter, Jasmine, pulled out her own phone and started a live TikTok stream. She had 12 followers. She had no idea that within hours, millions of people would be watching. Kowalski was tearing through Marcus's vehicle now. He tossed the expensive briefcase onto the asphalt. Confidential files scattered across the highway. Active federal indictments against corrupt law enforcement officers. Sealed witness statements. Undercover operation details. Marcus's voice rose for the first time. Those are sealed federal documents. You are compromising an active federal investigation. You are tampering with evidence in a criminal prosecution. Kowalski didn't stop. He found a small prescription bottle in the center console. He held it up like a trophy. Unlabeled prescription drugs, that's a felony, counselor. Except the bottle was clearly labeled. Marcus Thornton, prescribed by Dr. Sarah Chen, Austin Medical Center, valid prescription for anxiety medication. Kowalski didn't care. He dropped the bottle and kept searching. He was looking for something, anything, that would justify what he had already decided to do, and then he found nothing. No drugs, no weapons. No contraband of any kind, just a federal prosecutor with a clean record and a valid reason to be on this highway. Kowalski's face was red now. His ego was wounded. He had made a scene. He had called for backup. He had threatened and bullied. And he had nothing to show for it except a black man who knew his rights better than most lawyers. He grabbed Marcus's arm and twisted it behind his back. You're under arrest. For what? For obstruction. For failure to comply, for being a smart-mouth lawyer who thinks he's better than the law. He forced Marcus to his knees on the burning asphalt. The handcuffs clicked shut. Ray Williams was recording everything. Jasmine's live stream had 300 viewers now, growing by the second. The comments were already flooding in. Is this real? Someone call the real police. That cop is out of control. Kowalski stood over Marcus, sweating in the evening heat, his sunglasses reflecting the setting sun. You gonna sue me? Go ahead. I've been sued 8 times. Still here. Still hunting. You know why. Because I know how this works. You file your complaint. It goes to internal affairs. They investigate themselves. They find nothing. Case closed. You want to waste your time? Be my guest. But right now you're going to jail. And your fancy federal prosecutor badge isn't going to save you. The sound of sirens approached. Backup was arriving. Kowalski smiled. He thought reinforcements were coming to help him process his prisoner. But when the second patrol car pulled onto the shoulder, something unexpected happened. The young trooper who stepped out took one look at Marcus kneeling on the ground and froze. His face went pale. He recognized him. Trooper Daniel Reeves had testified 6 months earlier in a federal corruption trial. He had been a whistleblower, reporting misconduct in his own department. The prosecutor who had questioned him, who had protected him from retaliation, who had promised him that reporting the truth was the right thing to do, was now handcuffed on the side of the highway with his face in the dirt. Reeves walked slowly toward Kowalski. He whispered something. Kowalski's expression didn't change behind his sunglasses, but his posture did. He stiffened. He turned back to look at Marcus, really look at him for the first time. Reeves whispered again, louder this time. That's Assistant U.S. Attorney Thornton. He's prosecuting the McAllister case. The police corruption case, our case. Kowalski said nothing. He stood perfectly still. The wind blew a confidential federal document across his boots. Marcus heard the whisper. He knew the moment had come. He spoke clearly, projecting his voice for the phones that were still recording, for the live stream that now had 50,000 viewers, for the federal servers that had captured every word. Trooper Kowalski, you are currently being recorded by 3 separate devices. My federal-issued Bodycam has been broadcasting to the Department of Justice since you approached my vehicle. I am Marcus Thornton, Assistant United States Attorney for the Western District of Texas. I am currently prosecuting United States versus McAllister, the police corruption case involving this very highway patrol division. Your search of my vehicle violated my rights under the Fourth Amendment and 42 United States Code Section 1983. Your destruction of federal evidence violates 18 United States Code Section 1519. Your false report will be added to the pattern and practice investigation already underway by the Civil Rights Division. He paused. The highway was silent except for the wind and the distant sound of cattle. You picked the wrong man to mess with. But more importantly, you picked the wrong man to mess with on the wrong day, in the wrong case with the wrong witnesses. Kowalski slowly removed his sunglasses. His eyes were wide. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked at the handcuffs on Marcus's wrists. He looked at the scattered federal documents blowing across the highway. He looked at Trooper Reeves, who was already on his radio calling for a supervisor. He looked at the minivan across the highway, where Ray Williams was still recording, where Jasmine's live stream had just crossed 100,000 viewers. Kowalski fumbled with the handcuffs. His hands were shaking. He couldn't get the key to work. Reeves stepped forward and unlocked them himself. Marcus stood slowly. He brushed the dust from his suit. He walked to where his briefcase lay open and began gathering his documents, checking each one for damage. Kowalski tried to speak. Sir, I didn't realize you had my identification. You had my bar card. You had my federal credentials in your hand. You chose not to realize. You chose to see what you wanted to see. A supervisor arrived 20 minutes later, having driven from Waco at high speed. He took one look at the scene, one look at Marcus, one look at the 3 phones still recording, and knew that his career had just become very complicated. Marcus handed Kowalski his business card. My office will be in touch. Do not leave the state. You are now a subject of a federal civil rights investigation. Any attempt to contact witnesses, destroy evidence, or coordinate your story with other officers will constitute obstruction of justice. I would advise you to retain counsel. Kowalski took the card with a trembling hand. He looked at the ground. He said nothing. The TikTok livestream went viral overnight, 12 million views in 6 hours. The algorithm pushed it to every corner of the internet. The truck driver's footage hit local news by morning, then national news by afternoon. The Department of Justice issued a statement confirming Marcus's identity and announcing a federal civil rights investigation into Trooper Dale Kowalski. The Texas Department of Public Safety placed Kowalski on administrative leave pending investigation. But the real damage came when federal technicians recovered the footage from his Bodycam. The lens had been obstructed by his radio mic, a trick he had used before, but the audio had recorded everything, including the slurs he muttered under his breath when he thought no one could hear, including his confession to 8 prior lawsuits, all involving black drivers, all settled quietly by the state to avoid bad publicity. The pattern was clear. The evidence was overwhelming. 3 months later, Marcus stood at a press conference outside the federal courthouse in Austin. He was not there to announce his own lawsuit, though he had filed one. He was there to announce something larger, a pattern and practice case against the Texas Highway Patrol, using his own experience as Exhibit A. The case would become Thornton versus Texas Department of Public Safety, a landmark civil rights settlement that forced systemic reforms, independent oversight, and mandatory de-escalation training. Kowalski was indicted by a federal grand jury for deprivation of rights under color of law. He was convicted at trial, prosecuted by Marcus's colleague in the same office. He was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. The irony was not lost on anyone. The hunter had become the hunted, and the man he tried to humiliate was the one who ensured he faced justice. The final footage of the video shows Marcus Thornton, 3 months after the incident, standing in the same charcoal suit, in front of the same federal courthouse where he prosecutes corrupt officers. He looks directly into the camera. His voice is calm, methodical, the same voice he used on that burning hot asphalt. To every officer who thinks the badge makes them untouchable, who thinks a rural highway is far enough from accountability, who thinks they can harass and bully and destroy lives without consequence. I have a message. We have cameras now, we have cloud storage, we have federal prosecutors who look like the people you target, and we have long memories. The law is not a weapon for the powerful to use against the powerless. It is a shield for the innocent and a sword for justice. And sometimes, when you least expect it, the person you think is your victim turns out to be the one holding the sword. The screen fades to black. The last sound is the click of handcuffs. But this time, they are not on Marcus Thornton. They are on Trooper Dale Kowalski, walking into federal prison while millions of people watch.